Hi.
So, Paul, it's really nice to welcome you to Glasgow.
It's great to be here.
And I just watched your video about climate justice. And it just made me want to show you this building, which maybe I should just try and get shot a little bit. I'm not very good at this. There we go, that's better.
Yeah.
This is the Glasgow Museum of Modern Art.
Right.
And it was originally built, I think it was 1778 or something.
Right.
And it was the home of the tobacco and sugar merchant William Cunningham. It was his private home.
Wow. That's quite a house, isn't it? And quite a statement to want to make about yourself and how powerful and important you are.
Exactly. And just over there we've got Jamaica Street, and down there we've got India Street.
Yeah.
So I mean, Glasgow is just steeped in colonialism.
Yeah, and Glasgow is just full of these grand buildings. It they wanted you to know that they were important, they had dominion, they had taken over the world. Incredibly powerful statement they chose to make. And I suppose the question for us now is how do we deal with that history? What does that mean for me as a white British person? What does that mean? What does that mean if we are, as Quakers now, an anti-racist community? How do we engage with that? And then also, I'm here in Glasgow for COP26. What does it mean for us as a community working for climate justice?
Exactly.
Because so much of what is going on in terms of the climate crisis and the impact on the global south is a direct result of a racist colonial history.
Exactly.
And this building just symbolises the weight of that we carry.
It just epitomises it. And for me, as a black Quaker, I can't stand on my high horse because my name Minnis is Scottish, and it will have been a slave name, but I undoubtedly will have probably white Scottish ancestors. So I will have had ancestors who were slaves, but I will also have had ancestors who were slave owners.
Yeah, and quite possibly an ancestor who was a rapist.
Absolutely.
Because that was kind of how that went.
And I suppose, you use the term rape, and I think about that. I think that's a really pertinent term when we're thinking about climate justice.
Yeah.
Because it was actually a rape of the countries, of the Indian subcontinent, of Africa, and it's still carrying on.
I mean, it's an exploitation. It's somebody arriving with power, abusing that power over, whether you're talking about a woman's body or over the planet. I was listening to a Panamanian indigenous speaker yesterday at an event for Christian Aid, who was talking about how in her community the earth is their mother. And so that imagery of rape actually is, pretty much what's happening there.
And when I was thinking about this the other day, I was actually sitting in Glasgow Quaker meeting, wearing the dress that I'm wearing now, which cost me $19.99, and I was just sitting there thinking, I nearly ministered, but I thought, no, this is for me. But I did wonder who sewed the seams on that dress and whether they were paid enough, whether they were a child.
And we're so hardened to it, or kind of almost oblivious to it here in the West, that the whole economic system just works like that. Yeah. It's just the wallpaper of the room we live in. And so we don't notice it, we don't know how to challenge it, we don't know how to replace it, what to replace it with. And whatever progress that gets made at something like COP26, it's going to barely scratch the surface of that problem. And somebody said to me in a Quaker event a few months ago, they said the legacy of racism demands a Quaker response as powerful as the Quaker response to war. It demands a testimony of witness, of anti-racism engagement. And it stuck with me because I don't think we yet think of racism as that sort of scourge.
I agree.
And yet, if you look at the damage it's done to people and to planet, it's right up there with warfare.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I think it's one of the big sources of warfare. If you're sitting in Angola, Angola is the breadbasket of Africa, but everybody wants it. So,
or if you're in Congo with the lithium mines, the exploitation of minerals,
it's all connected.
It's all going on. So, what does that mean for us? Where does that take us? How do we live with that? How do we live with ourselves and the complicity with all those issues? There's some tough questions there.
Some tough questions. This is a good place to ask them.
Yeah. And I mean, Glasgow, it's a great city. There's here is this tremendous civil society movement calling for change. There's a palpable demand for things to be different. You can feel it in the air. There's helicopters overhead and police vans driving past, keeping an eye on protesters, and that's going on the whole time. And so change starts in places like this.
I agree.
And it also starts, I think, in the quiet of Quaker meeting.
I agree.
You can sit there and I talk about edge of your seat silence. You can kind of sit there and you don't know what's going to happen, and you come out of it and you think, I'm going to have to do something about this. And it is ultimately why we're here, I think, this films. There's an old friend in my meeting, he must be in his mid-90s now, and once said to me, there's no point having a faith if you don't do anything with it.
Yeah, well, one of our elders, actually, when we started doing our work on white privilege, she said, we were so instrumental in the abolition of the slave trade, but the work isn't finished. And it gave me goosebumps. I thought it was exactly it. A lot of work still to do, because we're living within that history. It's not really history, it's now,
still there,
isn't it?
It's still there, it's still part of who we are, part of our identity. And for Quakers as a white majority church with a white history, history, you can't get away from it. And the danger is, I think, we make it about a series of totems. So, there's been a discussion going on about William Penn and whether we should name a room after William Penn. And it matters and it doesn't matter.
I agree.
It matters to me
100%.
that staff who I'm responsible for at Friend's House, who have slavery in their ancestry, aren't kind of uncritically being asked to clean a room named after somebody who could have enslaved one of their ancestors. That matters to me, but it matters far more to me that we acknowledge the whole complexity of that history. Penn was a remarkable figure, both as a slave owner and as somebody who tried to break down the norms of slave ownership. There's, the complexity of that matters, and we have to get into the nuance of it. I've got a badge in my bag that says I think you'll find it's more complicated than that.
Well, I also think that before we spend a lot of effort criticising people like William Penn, we should think about where we're buying our clothes from. Because actually, if there was a child who sewed my dress, then I'm responsible for that. And in 200 years' time, I think we'll look back, and if there was ever a room named after either of us, people might say, take it down, because they were buying their clothes from Primark.
Yeah, they might well. And I don't know, we can do what we can do if we listen to our leading and go where they take us, don't we? And I don't think that means we should be consumed with guilt the whole time.
Exactly.
But I think it should mean we're consumed with a kind of reforming zeal.
Yes.
That is, what can we do? How can we move forward? And people will look at us and say, well, how could you possibly have stood there? And at least you'd be able to turn around and say, well, at least we moved. And that may be as good as it gets, and we may have to live with that. We will be judged. We will certainly be judged as a generation who didn't do enough of that time.
Exactly. And let's do our best to make up. I'm just going to see if I can get this wonderful building, which is, wonderful and awful building.
Yeah. And who's this on the horse behind us?
Oh my goodness, that's
Wellington.
Icons, yes. Let me see if I can get them in.
Yeah.
There we go. We as you know, in Glasgow, we have a very irreverent attitude to him. We always has a traffic cone.
Yeah, well, I suspect that's no more than he deserves.
Exactly.